Hello and welcome to Powered by Snowflake Demo Day. Today, we will see demos from 4 startups who are reinventing SaaS by building their AI and data-centric applications on top of Snowflake. We are also joined by our VC partners at Redpoint, Altimeter, Madrona, Anthos, and Amplify. My name is Harsha Kapre. I joined Snowflake in 2017 as a product manager and moved to the Snowflake Ventures team in 2022. All of the startups you will be hearing from today are designing their applications to run directly in the customer Snowflake account. And by bringing the processing to the data, these applications ensure compliance with the security, privacy, and governance requirements of enterprise customers. Now, before we hear from our startups, let's first spend some time with Andrew Ng, CEO of Landing AI. Andrew is here to discuss his vision for the future of AI and talk about why his company has chosen to build on Snowflake. Andrew, it's great to have you here today.
Thanks, Harsha. Great to see you as always, and good to be here.
Great. So, Andrew, you're the founder of DeepLearning.ai, the founder and CEO of Landing AI, the general partner at AI Fund, the chairman and co-founder of Coursera, and an adjunct professor at Stanford University's Computer Science Department. So, what's keeping you busy and excited these days?
AI technology is dramatically growing the set of things we could do with AI. So I feel like the number of opportunities to build is expanding rapidly, and I end up excited about all the things we could do. I feel like whenever there's a new wave of technology, a lot of people tend to focus attention on the tech layer, what the big tech companies are doing, and nothing wrong with that. But what that really means is this new tech layer creates a lot of opportunities for us all to build a lot more applications. So, and I think people tend to underappreciate how much there is to do there.
Great. Okay. So, Andrew, with that, let's turn our attention to your entrepreneurial side. Can you tell us a little bit more about Landing AI and why did you found Landing AI and what does Landing AI do?
Yeah, so Landing AI provides software that makes that makes computer vision easy. Years back when I was leading, after having led AI teams in Google and Baidu, I saw how large tech companies can create and capture a lot of value using AI. But it was difficult for many businesses other than those big tech companies with massive resources and so on to build a lot of the very meaningful projects that I felt like could be built. And so I think AI had a long tail, still has a long tail problem where we figured out a recipe to hire, say, 100 engineers to solve $1 billion problem. But once you go outside the consumer software internet sector, there are lots of, let's call them $1 million problems that you can't afford to hire 100 engineers to solve, that we're just sitting there without an easy way to get them done. And so I felt that by creating better tools, especially developer tools, to make it easy for anyone to build computer vision applications, we could unlock a lot of that value.
Okay, got it. So, Andrew, how are customers using Landing AI's platform today, and what industries are you seeing the most traction with?
As we released Landing AI's tools out into the wild, I was surprised and delighted by the breadth and creativity of use cases that developers would come and implement on top of Landing AI's platform. We start off in manufacturing, so working with very large smartphone makers, very large battery manufacturers, very large electronics manufacturers. So our software is running in a bunch of these firms. So a lot of manufacturing use cases, and then also life sciences. I think for a long time we've had a lot of biological scientists say peering under a microscope for hours, and computer vision can automate a lot of that work. But going beyond that, I've been surprised and delighted at the range of applications in processing drone imagery or having things fly around to inspect infrastructure. And there's this very long tail of many use cases in media and entertainment, in shopping and retail, and it's been exciting seeing with ease to use computer vision to what someone could do with their image data.
Got it. Okay. And thinking maybe a bit more generally, what do you see as some of the biggest challenges with building AI products, given today's environment?
I think the workflow of building and deploying an AI system is still harder than I wish it were. So I think Dan and I were working hard to make that even easier. But just to call some of the things, I think scoping the right project is still a little bit of work to think through. Is this a vision problem? How do I pose this as a vision problem? How to implement it? But I think, like many other AI projects, scoping or picking the right project to work on, that still takes some technical judgment as well as some business judgment about what is valuable. And then I think a second challenge is getting the data right is still difficult. We're at the point where there's enough computer vision algorithms that if you use Landing AI's algorithms or some algorithm, it often is good enough. But getting the data right, how much data do you need? Can you label it in a clean way? That is still very challenging, which is why for the past few years we've been thinking a lot about data-centric AI, which is the discipline of systematically entering the data to build a successful AI project. Oh, and I was actually excited when I was at New York's conference last December. There's a massive AI problem, massive AI conference. The New York's conference put up big banners about what are the major themes of AI. So I think deep learning was one. I don't know, maybe Bayesian learning was one, reinforcement learning was one, and there was a big banner on data-centric AI. So this data-centric AI movement has become one of the central pillars of at least the New York's conference. But I think that's a technology area that we're invested in and that we should keep on paying attention to. And of course, the rise of generative AI and large language models, but increasingly also large vision models, the data that goes into that also remains a critical part of how we build these systems.
Got it. And I think that ties in really well with my next question when you talk about data-centric AI and the value of the data itself as being part of the challenge. So maybe we can talk a little bit about the partnership with Snowflake. We actually just announced
the data Snowflake connection.
Yes.
This right now.
I wouldn't miss that for the world. So, I wanted to highlight that we just announced the Snowflake investment in lending AI. And from your perspective, why is this partnership so important?
I'm excited about partnership. So honestly, I think I consider myself lucky that I think you had worked with our COO Dan Maloney way back, and so Dan helped make the connection from us to you and Snowflake, and then to hear about Christian Kleinemann's vision for where Snowflake is going. But I feel like from a little bit further away, I've had respect and admiration for Snowflake for a long time as an easy way for enterprises to get all the data into one place, to get one way to access all your data, and even with multi-tenant across multiple clouds, so that ease of use, get access to all your data. I've respected that from afar for a long time. And the other trend that I believe in, and I'm excited about working with Snowflake on, is a lot of AI has been on structured data. And in fact, historically, Snowflake's helped many of your customers store and process their structured data. But we know that most of the world's data is unstructured data, things like text and images. And so with Snowpark Container Services and the native app framework, building a richer ecosystem, and also your new GPU support within that framework, I've been excited. The whole Landing AI team is excited about finding a way to take computation to the massive amounts of unstructured data that is increasingly available on Snowflake to help many more people create value, not just from the structured data, which Snowflake has been doing really great for a long time now, but also increasingly to do this on unstructured data as well. So I find that piece of the global AI puzzle fascinating and really promising. And I actually want to give Christian credit as well. I think Christian Kleinemann has been articulating this vision very well for a very long time. And I'm very, very, very delighted to get to be part of it.
Absolutely. And you touched on here, Snowpark Container Services, native apps, and maybe even a little bit towards this next question, but maybe get a little more specifics about why you chose to build on top of the native app framework with Snowpark Container Service, and what does that really mean for customers, and what does that unlock for customers?
Yeah, so I think we've seen that data has a certain gravity to it. It attracts other things to it. And a lot of the world has realized that rather than moving the data to the compute, it's often easier to move the compute to the data. And so I think with the native app framework, built on top of the Snowpark Container Services, it makes it possible to run AI jobs, and in our case, it'd be computer vision jobs specifically, right next to the data. And then I feel like in addition to this framework of, can we now take exciting computer vision compute, right, AI training, inference, move it to the data? At this moment in time, computer vision technology continues to rapidly evolve. We're spending a lot of our time, for example, building large vision models to customize. The world's seen large language models. The rise of large vision models is exciting. And I think of that in the context of all the work that Snowflake is doing in the context of Cortex. And it feels like the world is evolving quickly. But we know where the data is, right? It's on Snowflake, and there's a lot of work to do together to kind of go where the puck is as the computer vision technology continues to evolve. So I feel like that partnership felt like a good way to together, figure out the technology and deliver a huge lot of value with computer vision right now, but also to figure out the next few generations of technology even as they evolve.
Got it. Yeah. All right, so my last question here is really maybe more for the audience, and specifically what advice you have for entrepreneurs that are trying to make sense of everything that's going on in the AI space these days. How should they really think about taking advantage of AI today?
I think the top message would be God and build. It's easier than ever before, and there's so many opportunities that did not exist even 3 months ago or 6 months ago. And I think broadly in terms of entrepreneurial activities, I think loosely maybe there are two broad categories of companies. One is the infrastructure type of company. So companies that offer, large language model APIs or large vision model APIs and so on. I think there will be some mega winners at the infrastructure layer, but it is hyper competitive. And but what many people tend to underestimate is the amount of work to be done at the application layer. Because it turns out the media tends to talk about infrastructure companies, and clearly, Snowflake is a super successful infrastructure company. But it turns out the only way for infrastructure businesses to do well is if the applications built on top of them make even more money so they can afford to pay the infrastructure businesses. So what I'm seeing is that there are so many vertical applications where it's not that competitive, but there's still a very large market to go after. And I think this is a time to take responsible AI seriously, but nonetheless move quickly and build on top of all these wonderful tools that are becoming widely available. One of my teams, deeplearning.ai, we offer a lot of courses, some through Coursera, mainly through that to help people learn how to take advantage of the AI tools. And we're seeing very large interest in that too, because there's so many tools. Learning how to take advantage of them just lets you build a lot of really cool stuff really quickly.
Yeah, very cool. No, and I think to kind of emphasize some of the points you made earlier, I mean, and then being able to do that on top of where the data already sits, right, which is the real value of this partnership is that you've seen that firsthand, is bringing that application to run on top of the data itself. And so, there's no data movement, the security, governance, compliance that I talked about earlier is taken care of. I mean, I think from my perspective, that's why this partnership is so exciting as well. So with that, Andrew, I just want to say thank you very much. It was really great to hear your thoughts on AI in the enterprise, your advice for startups. And so really, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Harsha. I feel like the Snowpark Container Services and native has been such a wonderful framework to build on top of, taking us to the data. I hope many other entrepreneurs will take advantage of that too.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, so very, very good. Thank you. So with that, let's get into demo day. I'm now going to pass it off to Ben to introduce our first startup.
Thank you, Harsha and Andrew. My name is Ben Goffredson. I help run Snowflake Startup Program, and I want to thank you all for joining our third ever demo day. We went out, we handpicked 4 startups who are doing really groundbreaking work in our Snowflake ecosystem to come and tell us about what they're building and actually go and demo the native app they have running on Snowflake. Our aim with these demo days is to showcase the cool work being done by startups on Snowflake to a wide audience. Previous demo days have helped these startups participating find new users, potentially new investors, and we want to replicate that success. So we are joined by 5 leading VCs who focus in the data and AI space and know it well, who are going to be watching these demos with us and asking questions of each team, and a bit on the format run through. So each startup's going to have 10 minutes to tell us their story, show us their product, then we're going to leave time for questions from this great VC audience. And speaking of our VC friends, would love to introduce you all. Sai, let's start with you. A quick intro on yourself and a bit on Redpoint.
Hey guys, excited to be here. I'm Sai, I'm a partner over at Redpoint, a venture capital firm that's been around for almost 25 years, investing across categories from the seed through pre-IPO. I sit on our early growth fund, which focuses on companies scaling towards their Series B and Series C. My background, I studied CS and engineering at school. I was a data scientist at NASA shortly after. I did a few years of tech banking at Morgan Stanley, and joined Redpoint about 5 years ago to help lead the charge on our infrastructure software investing. So companies like Snowflake that we invested at the Series B, we're trying to find the next one. So I do a lot of our data and security investing. So involved with companies like Cribble and Sierra and Orca, Monte Carlo Data, Materialize. So yeah, excited to be here.
Good to have you. Pauline, would love to hear from you next.
Hey guys, excited to be here. I'm Pauline. I'm a partner at Altimeter Capital. We are an early growth stage firm as well as a hedge fund. We led the Series C in Snowflake. And as a whole, we do a lot of infrastructure software. And so have invested in companies like Okta, Mongo, Twilio, GitLab, Confluent, UiPath, all pre-IPO. And I've been a partner here for almost 7 years now. I've covered everything from gaming to horizontal software companies, and have been doing nothing but AI for the last 18 months, which has been a fun ride, but excited to see all the startups today.
7 years is quite a run. Thank you. Great to have you. Maria, would love to hear from you next.
Hey everyone, I'm Maria. I'm super excited to be here today. I'm at Madrona. I'm a principal. I've been at the firm for a little bit over 2.5 years, where I've covered everything from gaming to consumer internet to data and developer tools. Some of the companies I work more closely with are Visual Layer, Runway ML, Rhythms AI, all of which kind of fit in the next generation intelligent application space or tooling for developers to build these intelligent applications. At Madrona, we invest pre-seed all the way through Series C. I focus a little bit more on seed and Series A investments. And yeah, super excited to be here today and meet everyone.
Good to have you. Sam, would love to hear from you.
Hey everybody, pumped to be here. Named Sam. I'm with Anthos Capital. We are a minority growth equity fund based out of Santa Monica. Been on the team for 4.5 years and helped co-lead our software team. So excited to be here.
Good to have you. And last but not least, Mark.
Hey, good morning. Mark LaRosa, partner here at Amplify Partners. So Amplify is an early stage, primarily venture capital firm. We're based in San Francisco. We focus heavily on AI, developer tools, data, and cybersecurity. Got around $1 billion under management, a little over. And we have about a decade-long track record of, again, seeds and A's are primarily our focus. I've been a partner here for about 5 years. We kind of got our start in the space with folks like Datadog and Fastly. We led those rounds. Most recently working with folks like in the technical space like DBT Labs, Hex, Runway ML, SEMA, Temporal, folks like that. My background is actually much more as an operator. So I started out my career at Google as a user experience designer, and then led a lot of solutions architecture teams in the startup space in between, and then culminated most recently running principal solutions architects at AWS. So I love large scale distributed systems problems, and really focus heavily on helping our companies get to market in the early days.
Nice. Good to have you, Mark. That is an impressive roster that we're featuring today. Pumped to have it, and some great perspectives and some great companies that you all listed off as some key investments. So before we hear from the startups, would love to hear from you all about what is getting you out of bed, what's getting you excited. So we're sitting here, it's the end of February 2024. I'm going to ask this broadly to the group. What emerging trends in data and AI have you all excited?
Well, I'll happy to jump in. So we're trying. Obviously, we're seeing a lot of companies right now starting to glom on to like LLM for this or AI for that, and there's a lot of noise in the space. There was a lot of really early great starts. Now it's gotten flooded with things that we're all pretty sure most of which are not going to actually work out. So we're all trying to figure out what's the next signal to look for here that's going to really be the lighthouse that's going to direct kind of more companies to glom on. And for me personally, I've been reading a lot of papers on teaching computers to actually reason when you see all of the mistakes and things that chatbots are making. And, it's because they're not reasoning, right? They're just doing essentially like, very advanced search on a much larger, 3D space effectively. And so I'm just looking for people that are skating to the next 5 to 10 years problem, thinking as as an early stage investor in that sense.
Interesting. Thanks, Mark. Sai, you had your hands-on experience you were talking us through at the beginning. Are there any trends that you're getting excited about?
Yeah. Well, especially for these enterprise AI use cases and model development, your models are only as good as the underlying data that's feeding these systems. So I think there are a lot of actually interesting second and third order problems that are created with productizing AI and Gen AI use cases, such as data security, data lineage, understanding what you're feeding into these models. And there's a whole slew of AI infrastructure tooling and AI and data security companies that are coming out to solve a lot of these enterprise use cases. Once you kind of decide to implement these Gen AI use cases.
That's fascinating. Maria, sitting in Seattle, I know Madrona has such a presence there. Are there any interesting trends you're seeing in that specific community and startup culture that are worth noting?
Yeah, we're also super excited, as Sai mentioned, about how you manage your data, see what's in your data, and how you feed that into building and training models. One area that hasn't been mentioned that we're interested in right now is opportunities for edge and local applications that are accelerated by the rise of small language models. So small language models, in many cases, are able to reduce the cost of compute, solve for some latency challenges, and manage some of the shortage challenges we're seeing with GPUs. So that's definitely a space we're looking at as an area where there could be a lot of infrastructure opportunities, but also how do you build applications on a mobile device that can be more personalized, faster, solve a lot of the problems we're seeing with language models today.
Good deal. Thanks, Maria. Sweet. Sharon, I see you joining us. Let's get this thing started. Let's have some fun. Sharon, good morning. It's great to have you. It's great to meet you. I'm going to hand it off to you to take us through the Lamini story, the Lamini pitch.
Awesome. Okay. I'm going to talk about Lamini. We currently offer, production LLM pods with a full stack framework, and our mission is to make it possible for every enterprise to build their own superintelligence. My background is I was most recently computer science faculty at Stanford, leading a research group in generative AI, and publishing award-winning papers there across NeurIPS, ICML, and iClear. I also did my PhD there under Andrew Ng in generative AI, and I teach about 250,000 students and professionals online in, you guessed it, generative AI. I'm also a builder though. Like before my whole academic career, I was a product manager, machine learning product manager at Google, and an enterprise PM at a couple startups. So that's my background, blend of product and expertise in generative AI. My co-founder's background is far more impressive along generative AI. He started in 2008 as one of the original CUDA architects at NVIDIA. He has about 14,000 citations, having invented scaling laws and tensor cores, which are key technologies here. And he's shipped a large language model in production to over 1 billion users in the Baidu search engine. And that was the first scale out of NVIDIA GPUs at the time. For AI specifically. That was also with Andrew, and that's how we met. So glad you guys got to hear from him. Cool. So maybe just to walk through kind of our story and kind of what motivates us. So, you know, LLMs represent all intellectual work and labor. They can augment all of it, right? We've already seen that to be true in terms of everyone playing with ChatGPT. It's pretty obvious it's there. So they represent this new IP that's honestly the most valuable derivative of data that you can have today. And I think that's really, really exciting in many ways. But it's also a little scary for a lot of the companies we work with. You know, they're kind of distraught over messing it up. You know, they've spent decades trying to figure out their data governance structure, everything, you know, to make sure their data was secure because it's so valuable. Now it's become even more valuable, like 10x more valuable. And they don't want to lose it all, right? They don't want to just not own it. So they're frantically cobbling it together, and this was a generated photo of frantically cobbling things together. And I think it's personally, I think it's absolutely absurd to assume that the future of you know, this direction of where LLMs are going is, you know, enterprises are going to outsource all of their intellectual work to a few companies out there and just become shell distribution channels. So I don't think that's irrelevant or possible or the future that it should be necessarily. And of course, you know, with Snowflake, it also doesn't make sense there. So enterprises, you know, what do they want to build? Well, they want to build these experts, is what we found. And here are a few of our customers that are public. You know, they want to build a fitness expert. They want to build a marketing expert. They want to build a legislative expert. They want to build, you know, ChatGPT on their proprietary data, and they want to put their proprietary data in and their expertise in. We also have several customers who are not totally public yet, but essentially that's just a few different possible experts you could be building, and I'll go into detail on a couple of them. But it's honestly been kind of a roller coaster. You know, they have brief moments of optimism when a blog post comes out, and it's very exciting, you know, new RAG approach, but then it's followed quickly by disappointment because it didn't actually fully solve their problem, and they're not shipping it in production. It was a cool demo, but that's it. It can be frustrating, but also exciting, right? As they try all these different APIs, and folks often come to us when they say, well, fine-tuning didn't work, or putting my proprietary data into this model actually just didn't work. It worked for the demo. It worked to get a little bit of funding in my business line, but that was it. I'm not shipping it in production. So what are folks building at a, you know, finer grain level? Well, you know, for the fitness expert, I actually really like this story. It's because, you know, at first I thought, okay, this consumer application, a fitness coach, great. What kind of expertise is in there? I feel like you could just kind of scrape the web a little and get it done kind of ChatGPT style. But it turns out their personal fitness trainers have a ton of expertise in, you know, sports medicine, et cetera. And there was this one year they tried hiring Michael Phelps, and they're like, you know, we're going to hire Michael Phelps because if anyone can be a fitness coach, it'd be great for him to be everyone's fitness coach. Because that just, you know, drives a lot of demand. But turns out he's not the best fitness coach out there. And it's okay. Like, he's really good at other things. He's really good at swimming. So turns out there is expertise in that. And there is expertise in being that coach, and there's personalization in it. And so that's what they're building. And they have a ton of data on not just every user, but also just outcomes. And that's what excites me, because then they can actually have statistics like this one, where they can increase exercise levels by nearly 40%. That's super exciting to me. That means you're using LLMs for, you know, serious health benefits in this case. Next one, quorum, you know, legislative expert, bills. I don't know if you've ever looked at a state or federal bill. It's like thousands of pages in PDF, pretty tedious. The language reminds me of legalese essentially, and having to analyze and reason across those bills is something that their customers need, because they're making decisions. Maybe they're maybe it's not super glamorous, maybe it's a big oil company, and they want to understand, you know, the impact of this bill on their downstream decisions and what they need to do there. Insurance contract expert, I'll go into that a bit. Materials expert, again, the same. These are all like a large amount of data that is, you know, expertise in some way across these domains, and that just, you know, out of the box LLMs just can't figure out, because in some of these cases, I think actually in all of these cases, what I've learned is there are enough tokens to train an entire new GPT-4 level model. They don't have to necessarily do that upfront. It's a big investment, but I feel like that's very exciting in that there's just so much information in these enterprises. So I'm going to go through an example real quick of this Fortune 500 health insurance company, really, really old health insurance company. One of the customers basically saw healthcare be like a huge bureaucratic slug, wasting billions of dollars on 1,000-page insurance contracts. And he sees this problem, right? This is a problem. I just want to note that I don't necessarily see immediately, but he's in the domain, he sees it. He can now turn on this LLM pod and be able to confidently push all his contracts into the LLM via the pod and actually get it to learn that knowledge and not like completely break or forget how to speak to him. And get this insurance contract expert that can navigate the horror of the US healthcare system, and feel empowered to actually build more things. And I think that's super important, because I think the people who will build the most powerful models moving forward might not look and be shaped like me or my co-founder Greg. And I hope it's not, because I think a lot more people see a lot of different problems out there that we don't see or can work on. So this is really about empowering them to do it. Exactly what are we empowering them to do? So here's what our stack looks like. Just a architecture diagram here of, you can put your data in, see that Snowflake data can go in, and be able to run a lot of open source frameworks on top, which is just best practices, and then all of those jobs of those best practices are optimized on our pod. And our pod runs on all sorts of compute, including both NVIDIA and AMD. I think AMD maybe is like the most interesting one to folks, because sometimes you're blocked on supply for NVIDIA GPUs. In terms of a benefit, here are a few stats on what scaling it out means. So this is related to how many LoRa's or models or fine tunes, you can think of it as, that you can put on for every server. This is important if you want to scale on more data or you want to personalize to more users. So instead of buying 4,000 GPUs, you can just buy one. It's kind of what this is saying. Big deal. It also can be cheaper on AMD GPUs, and you can get better price performance. Great. So Lam and I really, right now, our focus of our customers is, these enterprises for Fortune 1000. It's because we can do a quick 10-minute install on your VPC. We can also do it on-premise. So we have on-premise deployments in areas where there's no internet. So you're literally training and running your LLM with no internet. And as a result, we can pass any enterprise security review. You keep your data where it is. In this case, for this session, it definitely is Snowflake, obviously. And you can export LLMs with no lock-in. We're not here to own your models. Just like I said, LLMs are the new IP. We're just a system to run that. And for us, we need to prove to you that we are the best system for you to run that on. And otherwise, we're not here to lock in your LLMs, keep the weights or anything. So it's incentive aligned from that perspective. It's designed for complex enterprise controls, and it makes scaling really easy. This is not a trivial thing to be able to scale like that. And again, best price performance. And it works out of the box for every software engineer. And we have a great developer community. And yeah, this is on Andrew's platform. If he were here, I'd tell him I think he's a little bit jealous that they came to my class more than him. But okay. Okay, so Lam and I really has a competitive advantage here. Part of our big IP is around being able to run on both NVIDIA and AMD GPUs alike. We work very closely with Lisa. She's amazing. I really, really believe in her. And so we have a deep hardware integration there. And of course, sorry, the transitions are not the best here, but we partnered with great folks like Snowflake. I'll just mention Snowflake here. Okay, cool. Yeah, so this is kind of what the process looks like for an engineer. Just to dive one level deeper, you can install it, you identify data, you onboard with us, and then you get to iterate. And this iteration piece is where kind of the money is. So you transform data. This is some lines of code for domain adaptation, but it's only 3 hours on the LLM pod. I think we did some crazy profiling on a different LLM, and it took 3 years. So yeah, you kind of want this to take 3 hours instead of 3 years. Submit data to train, again, another big computational problem. So making sure that process is extremely streamlined there. Being able to score the LLM, that's important. That's related to evals, which again was my PhD dissertation. And then that's important to basically put in human preferences or preferences in some way back into the model with DPO. Great. So here's a bit of a demo of it running inside of Snowflake. Basically, I don't have enough credits right now to run it live, but here.
So you can see up here that this is the Lamini playground running in Snowflake, and many fine-tuning examples here that you can take a look at. Here's also a Llama 2 playground. And what we want to focus on today is this API token, the test token within your Snowflake environment that you can then use and pass into the Jupyter Hub that we have also hosted through Lamini in Snowflake. So right here, you're passing in your test token right here into the config. This is just authentication so you can actually run the model. And then you can grab some data sets. I'm just going to grab some public data sets here that we put together so you can easily work with them. But of course, you can query this out of your Snowflake database as well. And then some really simple code to actually get started training your first model. So what's going on here is we are loading up the question answer model from Lamini's Llama library. And here it's just passing in that test token through your config. And then you're able to load question answers. I'm going to choose the Taylor Swift JSON-L file. Load that in here, have a little bit of fun, fine tune this model, and then evaluate it, which you'll all be able to see in the interface. So let's run this now. All right, fantastic. The training job has been submitted and we can check the status of job 3 right here. And so this should be just right here in this train tab. All right, it's queued up and then you can see it go in progress as it moves towards completion. Here's a failed state. There are a lot of different states that you can see right here of when the model is completed. Cool. So the model has completed training here. So, it's answering questions about Taylor Swift and the eval results. You can also take a look at the logs, of what happened during training so it can help you debug. Finally, there's a playground that you can just easily run right here. You can rename this model. So Taylor Swift here. And then, of course, you can copy this model ID, which you can then pass back into the question answer model here. Later on, just to run inference, so model name equals that model ID in a string, and then you can run this LLM and you can continually fine tune it. You can do whatever you want with it. There's also a REST API that you can hook up to your own app to make that super easy to integrate into any kind of production solution. So thank you so much for learning about how to use Lamini in Snowflake. And I hope you have fun building your own large language model applications and excited to see what you build.
And that is it. Thank you.
Sharon, thanks a ton. That was awesome to see. I've been looking forward to that for a long time. We're going to open it up to questions. So participants, you can either go off mic or put it in the chat. But I kind of want to kick off the first question to you, Sharon. So the 10-minute install is obviously an impressive mark to set. How are you thinking about your sales go-to-market in the early days?
Yeah, that's so top of mind, sir. Well, okay, so 10-minute install was an important thing for us to hit early on. You kind of have to build from the ground up like that. You have to build from the ground up thinking about, we're going to do this on premise. We're going to do this in any environment, right? We're going to do this in, various VPCs, and that is what the enterprise expects, both to pass the security review, et cetera. And now for go-to-market, what that looks like is it completely changes who we can go after as a customer, right? If we didn't have that, we wouldn't be able to install in all these hybrid environments and it would be a slog, right? It'd be a huge services piece. Instead, the 10-minute install, the customer can do completely on their own. Just grab, we give them a link and they just grab the installer and do it.
Hey, Sharon, really appreciate the time and awesome presentation, and think that one piece I'm really interested in is the fine tuning aspect, and as though that's a really underutilized piece and is going to be very prominent over time. But one I think concern around it is just how complicated it is today in the way running. And so curious of how y'all are navigating that, whether it speaks to the type of people that you're selling to or quality or sophistication, and if the plan is to make that a simpler process over time.
Oh yeah, so we've definitely made it a simpler process, which hasn't been easy. I think before it was just us doing huge amount of services, and now it's actually the customer is able to do it on their own. And I think that's a very big difference. Also, the time has been dramatically, dropped, both from the development side of things and also from a data labeling side of things and data processing side of things, and also just training time. So baking in all the best practices into our platform. And I almost think the thing that we help the most with is not letting you go off the rails, not letting you go do that crazy thing that you thought was a good idea from a blog post. And I'm just I'm not going to let you. And I do that actually with the customer at all levels, certainly at this level, with the technical level. And we definitely have requests and we just say, no, but we can jump on a call if you want to understand why that's a bad idea. And then, but also at the leadership level, with the buyer typically, or the person who owns the use case, because, there have been some interesting wild ideas floated, and not all of them are high ROI. And that is something that if you're going to be putting in this much of an investment into it, this is not an easy piece of technology to wield. You should think of a high ROI use case to start out with. So at all different levels, it's about pruning, so to speak. Yeah, good question. Thank you.
Sharon, it's so great to meet you today, and congratulations on all the progress you've made. It seems like an incredible product. One question I have that we've seen a few times, me and different companies in this space is, do you see any challenges with making sure the data is properly prepped to go into the pods? And maybe that's solved through the partnership with Snowflake, but in terms of making sure they have their data organized in a way that they can go through the type of fine tuning you recommend to them. And
Yeah, so
how does that impact the onboarding experience?
Oh yeah, so they don't have to, okay, so there are different levels of prep, right? So I think the part where Snowflake is really helpful is around like, the security, the governance, all of that stuff. We don't do that. We do the AI piece of it. So all of that is all done by Snowflake. And you already have your data on Snowflake. Like if you already have your data on Snowflake, that's already completely solved, right? And now from where that stands to using the pod, it's like immediate. You don't have to wait. You don't have to like prep your data. I think people talk about, oh, and then there are all these libraries to like prep your data and best practices to prep your data. And what we found is actually ways to prep your data. Yes, you can go to Scale AI to go do it all manually. But you can also, we basically found ways for people to use the pod as well. It's still a very big computational problem. You can, instead of hiring 1,000 people in the Philippines, you can instead push it through an LLM. And that's something really special about this moment of, large language models in AI specifically, is that they're really good at zero shot. And what that means is that, instead of hiring 1,000 folks in the Philippines, it's like I can make 1,000 LLM calls. And that gets a little bit more interesting. And then when I say I mean, actually our customers are able to do that. And that whole process is optimized on our pod as well. And yeah, so like processing millions of documents, for example, like that, so that it can be in the best format possible for fine tuning. It's like that was one of the sequence of steps. And I think it's an important one. Yeah, again, we're like, you have to do this path to get to a successful model. And then when they do that, it improves, it succeeds, and they're not allowed to go off that path. Yeah.
Sharon, I think we could keep shooting questions your way all morning, but unfortunately, we're just going to have to bite our tongues and cut it off because we've got a
I know.
So thanks a ton, Sharon. That was awesome. It was a great way to start it out. So we really appreciate it.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Thanks, Sharon.
Thank you, Ben.
Bye. See you, Sharon. Awesome. Thanks all for the great questions. Excited to welcome our next two participants from Relational AI. I see them joining us right now.
Hi,
John, how's it going? Welcome.
Yeah,
you've got our team of VCs here, a couple of Snowflake folks as well. I'm going to hand it over to you both for introductions to Relational AI, the demo itself, and then we'll leave time for questions at the end.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Malham Arif. I'm the founder and CEO of Relational AI. And with me is John McIntyre. John, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, nice to meet everyone. My name is John McIntyre. I lead product here at Relational AI.
Okay, so let's dive in. So Relational AI is the relational knowledge graph coprocessor for the Snowflake Data Cloud. So at our core, we help deliver on the promise of all data, all workloads. This is something that Snowflake has been saying for some time and has changed the game, sort of making that true, and we make it even more true. So what do we mean by workloads? Our system basically makes it possible for Snowflake users to get support for what some people call composite AI workloads, like Gartner, or hybrid AI, or neurosymbolic AI workloads. For example, workloads that are related to graph analytics, rule-based reasoning, mathematical optimization, like linear programming, integer programming, simulation, classic machine learning, and of course, language models. All of these things are very important for decision-making, and you can't really build intelligent applications without having some subset of these workloads supported. So what do we mean by coprocessor? By coprocessor, we mean three things. First thing is that we're embedded inside Snowflake. And so we run inside the security perimeter. We follow the same governance protocols. And perhaps most importantly, our clients don't have to worry about manually synchronizing data. Basically, everything runs inside Snowflake and it's automatically synchronized. No ETL, nothing like that. Second thing we mean is that we're cloud native. So we're architecturally compatible with Snowflake. We separate storage from compute. And all of the benefits that Snowflake users enjoy relative to non-cloud native, Snowflake-like solutions accrue to us as well. So that means time travel, versioning, zero copy cloning, consumption pricing, all of that stuff that people basically consider table stakes now in the database world. For many of the alternatives for the kinds of workloads that we're talking about, you're still talking about something that is cloud hosted, not cloud native, and so on. And then the third thing we mean when we say coprocessor, we mean that we're compatible at the paradigm level. So we're relational the same way that Snowflake is relational. It's the proven and trusted paradigm in the enterprise for managing data, and it gives us a universal representation for data for knowledge. Okay, so that's very, very powerful combination. So we'll turn it over to John for a quick demo, and then we'll come back and talk a little bit about the implications of that.
Okay, I'm going to start in the Snowflake console and just show quickly what it looks like for relational AI running inside the Snowflake environment, specifically on the Snowflake compute platform, and how we materialize knowledge graphs on top of Snowflake data. Then I'm going to jump into Python and show what it would look like for developers to develop models and run new workloads in Snowflake, like graph analytics. So here we are inside the Snowflake console. I just want to show that we have relational AI installed as a native application inside this Snowflake account. That means that the services for relational AI are running. And so that means if we run show services, we can see a number of relational AI services running. Most importantly, they're running on the compute platform. So that means that, as Mohan mentioned, there's no data egress happening. So both compute and storage are running in the Snowflake environment. And so customers can then build their knowledge graphs inside that Snowflake environment. Next, what we can do is effectively publish data into a knowledge graph so that we can take some of the data that's in Snowflake, project it into that knowledge graph, build models, and do new work, enable new workloads on top of that data. We do that by specifying what we call data streams. You can think of data streams like dynamic tables. We specify the Snowflake object type. In this case, we're taking a table, and we're taking the accounts table, and we're taking the transaction table, and we're publishing that into the knowledge graph. And so with the application installed and the data published to the graph, we can actually now start to create models and run workloads that Snowflake doesn't support today. So if we jump into a Jupyter notebook, what we would do is start by importing the relational AI package. So we do that here, and we also import our graph library so that we can have access to all of the graph algorithms for running graph analytics on top of our knowledge graph. We then create a model. So here we're defining the name of the model that is built on top of the knowledge graph that we just published data into. Again, all of that is happening inside the Snowflake environment, sitting on all our processing is happening on Snowflake compute, and the data is residing in the Snowflake account. And then we define two objects. We define an account and we define a transaction. We could do additional data mapping at this point, and so that means mapping our model to underlying Snowflake data. But because we created those data streams in the Snowflake console, because we did that in SQL, we don't need to do that here. We can just start inspecting some of those objects that are in our model. So if I go and run this cell, we can see that my account object has a number of properties. Those properties are coming through from the underlying Snowflake data, but I can effectively model them and define properties at the knowledge graph level, and have a model that represents multiple objects and the relationships and rules associated with them. Similarly, I can look at the transaction data. So I'll run this cell, and we'll refresh the transaction data. And here I see from a database of accounts and transactions, I can also see the transactions. I have the to and the from and the amount of the transaction. I have the type of transaction, and I have the date of the transaction. So those objects and those properties are now part of my model. They're in my knowledge graph. And I can start to do interesting types of analytics on top of that, or I can enhance those models. So to do that, what I'll do is instantiate a graph from that model. So I put my model into the graph instantiation, and then I can start to add nodes and edges to the graph. That's what I'm doing here, where I'm adding the accounts as nodes. I'm adding the transactions as edges. So I can go run that. And then I can start to add new properties to the graph. So here I'm actually adding degree. What degree is calculating the number of inbound and outbound connections for a given account. So I'm adding that as a property to the graph. And then I can also add another property called PageRank. So if you're familiar with PageRank, this is an algorithm that was popularized by Google, often used for relevance or importance in a graph structure. And so I'm adding that as a property into the graph as well. And so that's now in my model, and I can start to visualize that data. So if I look at the graph structure, the visualization of that data, let me just run visualize. I can start to see the data in a way that's different from what I might expect in tabular data. I can see the connections in the accounts. I can see the transactions that are flowing between the accounts. I can start to look at patterns like, this particular node is an account. It is for Sundown Bakery or Brewery. That's a merchant, so you would expect a number of inbound connections to that. We see the degree, we see the page rank surface as properties for the graph. We can then take some of those properties and enhance our model. So we effectively can add PageRank to our model and say, accounts, now all accounts have PageRanks, and that again may be used for relevance in a business context. But we've now enhanced our model here by putting the PageRank score in the account object so that the account has that property. So you can imagine that there's a number of graph algorithms that can be used to enhance object and object properties. There's a number of rules. We can also support workloads like optimization and solving. So there's a number of ways that those models can be enhanced and built out to really represent the business context in which an organization is operating at. And so we've shown this on top of account and transaction data. We've actually worked with customers that are able to process graphs of north of 100 million nodes and over 1 billion transactions. And so we've had really, really great success with the scalability of both the Snowflake and relational AI platform.
I'm going to cheat a little bit by letting you know that in the Q&A, I have slides about a customer case study that you'd be interested in hearing more about. So very fantastic results. The customer is very excited about, and this is a very strategic customer for Snowflake. And then I'll just close by saying, so from our perspective, this model is really effective. Because it's a win for the customer, it's win for Snowflake, and win for us. Okay, win for the customer because generally our customers are very happy with Snowflake. They just spend a lot of time and energy moving all their data in Snowflake so they can secure it and govern it, et cetera, et cetera. And then last thing they want to do is move the data back out when they want to support graph analytics or rule-based reasoning or mathematical optimization or any of these other composite AI workloads. So the reception from the customer base has been phenomenal, really, really positive. And from a Snowflake perspective, I think it's pretty easy to be able to point to about $100 million of incremental increased consumption, both in terms of our consumption or customer consumption of SPCS, storage and compute, but also in terms of additional consumption of the underlying platform. So, we pretty easy to point to about $100 million of consumption, like I said, which, today's multiples is $2 billion of shareholder value for Snowflake. Okay. Also shared strategic customers and alignment there. Also, common strategic competitors, also a ton of differentiation around AI, combining generative AI with symbolic or relational AI, and then of course alignment at a very tactical level in the sales teams because the Snowflake sales people retire quota when our solution is picked over a solution that's a legacy solution that's external, et cetera, et cetera. And then finally for us, this has been amazing because as we all know, selling is hard. It's much easier to sell when the customers and the partners win. We get to leverage Snowflake's significant sales and marketing investment. In our model, we can leverage Snowflake's access to the execs, pre-existing budgets, security audits, the Snowflake partner ecosystem, Snowflake events, community, and we've seen this sort of very directly show up in in our pipelines and our growth. So we have way more demand than we are currently able to serve. So no top of funnel problem whatsoever. We've tripled our product consumption revenue over the last 2 years, and we expect to be able to keep tripling it for the foreseeable future, getting to about 100 million revenue the next 2 or 3 years. So with that, I'll pause and very happy to take questions.
Excellent. Relational AI team, thanks a ton. You guys really touched on a ton of the value points that we're seeing across native apps and container services. I'll kick it off with a question because it came to mind when you all were presenting. What are the typical personas that you all are having introductory conversations with? I'm curious if it differs from what is typical to Snowflake.
So again, we focus on Snowflake customers. So CDO or someone who works for the CDO is usually the entry point. The reception, we've never had this pitch not work, to be honest. It's just, if the organization wants to do graphs or rules or mathematical optimization or simulation, it's by far the best option. So then immediately goes into, okay, show us that this is real. And then we deal with the users of the system. And as you saw from John's demo, they're using our fairly sophisticated capabilities, but from the Snowflake environment, they're using it via SQL and Python languages in environments that are near and dear. So the users are also excited about meeting them where they are. So if we meet the buyer where they are in Snowflake, we're meeting the users where they are in Python and SQL.
Awesome. With that, I'll open it up to the floor for the questions.
Hey, Mullen, good to see you. I'll bite and ask you to talk us up through a case study that or use case that you found super valuable.
Okay, so very quickly, this is, like I mentioned, one of Snowflake's most strategic clients, referenced in almost every quarterly earnings report and keynotes and so on. So This is a very large player in the supply chain space, and they have a bunch of legacy solutions that they're trying to modernize and move over to Snowflake. They've been very public about that. And so basically, they give us, and so put the team together basically with a third-party consultancy and some of their engineers, and they give us about 15 weeks to see what we can do in terms of moving over one of these legacy applications. And so in 15 weeks, we showed them, we basically had to reverse engineer the app because all we had is the C++ code base. So the yellow bars are sort of the pieces of it that we hadn't reverse engineered. The blue part of the bar is the parts of the application were reverse engineered, but hadn't implemented it. And the green is that had been implemented. Okay, and you can see in about 15 weeks, we had 93.5% of the business logic implemented. Okay, and by the time we were done, this whole application that was about 205,000 lines of C++ was reduced to about 7,800 lines. By the time we're done, maybe 8,000, 9,000, maybe 10,000 lines. So you get that 20x compression in code, and the code becomes something that analysts can start to understand. So this application makes heavy use of mathematical optimization and integer programming. So part of what you do is you define an objective function. It's a sum of price times XDR shipments minus the transportation costs, minus the variable and fixed production costs, minus the variable and fixed inventory costs. So it's very, very straightforward semantics that end users can see now, instead of it having being buried in the bowels of in this case C++, but often Java and C# code. And implications are tremendous, because now so this customer cares a lot about Gen AI and wants to modernize that way, and now their Gen AI interfaces can start to answer questions not just about what happened in the business, but predictive questions. What will happen? What should I do about it? Okay, these are things you can't do if you don't have support for the kinds of workloads we support. They've also lifted all the business logic into a semantic layer. You'll hear from others today who are going to tell you more about the importance of these semantic layers. And just like we meet people where they are in Snowflake, we also meet them with their semantic layer technology. In this case, this is a homegrown semantic layer that this company is using. But, it's a software company, so if you make effectively the software developers 2x more productive, and in this case we have 20x reduction in code, that's amazing. And then the solution is automatically streamable and scalable, et cetera, because it's not an in-memory solution anymore. And when you operate in the supply chain, you have retail scale volumes, SKUs and stores and days and So, scalability is very, very important. Okay, so massive, massive improvement. Very excited to the level of the CEO of the organization. And this is just one example of many where we have seen the sort of compaction reduction when we move all the semantics into a declarative, relational knowledge graph type construct. Thanks, Pauline. I wasn't going to get that in if you didn't ask. So
we're glad we didn't. It touches on the reason why we were so excited to have you all participate, because we're seeing big buzz in our customer base with what you all have been building. So we wanted to showcase it. John, Moham, I want to thank you both for attending. That was great to see it live. So I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you all. Enjoy the rest of the session. Bye.
Frederic, Raphael, welcome.
Hey.
To have the actual startup challenge winner from this past year. We're pumped about it. So welcome to the Maxa AI team. I'm going to hand it over to you both for intros, and then we'll check out the product and leave some time for Q&A after.
Hi, everyone. So Raphael Steinman, co-CEO and founder of Maxa.
And I'm Fred Langlais. I'm EVP of Platform Solutions at Maxa.
So hi, everyone. I'm super excited to be here. So Maxa is the Snowflake native app for financial and ERP insight automation. If there's one thing you need to remember about everything about Maxa today, it's the following. What do you do once you've moved all your ERP data into Snowflake? You Maxa. Now, before I tell you why you should Maxa, let me just give you a bit of context of who we are. So Maxa started building its solution in 2020. In 2022, we had our first paying customer. 2023 was a fantastic year for Maxa. So we won the Snowflake Startup Challenge. We tripled our customer base and more than tripled our revenue, which puts us in a fantastic position in 2024 because we just launched our Series A funding round. And we're about 35 individuals in the team. There's also three other great reasons why we're happy to be Maxa. There's some things happening in the market. First of all, the CFO's role is changing. It's changing from being a scorekeeper to being asked to be a goal scorer. ERP systems continue to be a drag. They are complex systems, yet they hold some of a company's most richest data. And Snowflake, with its native apps, is enabling the rise of what we call the enterprise-grade startup. What that means is that large organizations can adopt leading-edge technology even when they are touching their most sensitive data. So what's an ERP? So essentially, an ERP is the system that runs the world's businesses. There's about 1,000 ERPs out there. And it's great to have a NetSuite connector, but you're actually missing out on the fun. There's a whole slew of, it's a large market, super fragmented. Like I said, there's 1,000 ERPs out there, and we believe there's about 4 million companies at least running on ERP systems. So what does Maxa do? Well, we automate out complexity. So without Maxa, if you have one ERP, you got hundreds of tables to deal with, try to analyze. If you have multiple ERPs, which is usually what a company has, well, you got thousands. With Maxa, all these cryptic data schemas get converted into a predictable, standard, relevant for business users tables that are really, really easy to use. So how does this happen? Well, everything I just described is actually a native app. So if you're a company and you have 3 ERPs, like we have on the right, well, the first thing you need to do is move all your data inside Snowflake. So we have Maxa Connect, takes raw data from the ERPs, brings that into Snowflake. Then there's Maxa Translate. This is Maxa's crown jewel. This is where all our magic sauce or secret sauce really happens. Maxa Translate takes all these complex cryptic data schemas, translates them so it simplifies and unifies, which means that it reduces these cryptic data schemas into simple tables, which then get unified into what we call the Maxa Universal Business Data Model. Once that happens, we have Maxa Perform. Maxa Perform is a library of themed automated analytics that go across finance, operations, and supply chain, and that allow to pre-compute insights at scale. These insights get written back in the Universal Business Data Model in a standardized, predictable way, and then that makes these beautiful insights ready to be consumed by what we call the Executive Hub. Fred, why don't we show them a demo?
So just to reemphasize what Raf just said, so everything that we described is executed inside of Snowflake as a native app. So let's see this in action. Before we jump to the demo, let's maybe describe what we're going to see next. So we're going to take one of our real-life customers. Their name is Heartprint. They are a manufacturing company. They print custom designs on beer cans. So fantastic business to work with. They came to Maxa with a problem. Their C-suite were spending countless hours every weekend wrangling data from different data sources into Google spreadsheets, and they were trying to make sense out of this. They also just acquired Snowflake, and they were trying to get value really quickly out of their investment. So what did we do? First of all, what we did is move all that raw data onto Snowflake by using native connectors in our suite of connectors. As you can see here, they have common data sources that are mainly present on the market. They have Salesforce as a CRM for their leads. They have a custom-made orders portal that is backed by a MySQL database. And then they were transitioning their accounting from Xero to NetSuite. So we're now able with Snowflake with native apps to create native connectors by using the external network access feature. We can virtually move any data source, whether on-prem or in the cloud, to Snowflake. So that was really the first step. And then, of course, applying the Maxa app on top to be able to transform, translate, and create the metrics and the KPIs that they were looking to see as well. All of this, of course, is executed inside of the customer Snowflake environment. So the output of what we do with Maxa is data as an asset. We like to call this a data product. I'm going to define this in just a minute. But in this case, the C-suite wanted to be able to engage with data by using a visualization layer, in which case we leverage our Streamlit app to do so. So let's jump to Snowflake. What you're seeing here is what the customer would see. So a bunch of native apps already installed. We have 4 native apps, independent native apps, each for the connectors that they're using. So Xero, NetSuite, MySQL, and Salesforce. Keep in mind that these are independent native apps in the sense that customers could decide to leverage them independently as well. But of course, what we hope is that they're going to use Maxa Translate to be able to create these metrics and KPIs as well for them. So the main application in this case, this is a demo, so we called it Maxa for Beer. You understand the pun. So this is what we're going to see. Next. So what you're seeing is what the C-suite actually now bring in their board meetings, which is amazing for us. So they went from using Google spreadsheets, stale data, to using a live application that's connected directly to their data. They're now able to look at their data by using what-if scenarios, apply different timeframes, filters, and of course, every change that they make in the UI is going to trigger a query to Snowflake, and then they're going to get the latest and greatest information that is displayed to them. So very, very far from what they were with their Google spreadsheets. So let's talk about what happens behind the scenes. So what you're seeing here is the layout of dynamic tables. This is what Maxa Translate is basically built upon. Each box that you see is a little piece of transformation, and all of them are chained together to be able to provide this layout. It might look very complicated, but don't worry, it's not a human being that sets this up. It's actually the Maxa technology that will inspect the input and the output and will lay this automatically on behalf of the customer. Let's look at this in more details. So you might recall on the left-hand side, the data sources that we add. So on the gray, this represents the table that the customer would have. Of course, this is a demo, so this is a very small number of tables. In real life, an ERP would have hundreds, if not thousands of tables. but they're going to have multiple ERPs. So think of the scale. So this can become extremely large and completely unmanageable for the customer to do on their own. So of course, this is done completely for the customer behind the scenes. So as you can see, we're going to funnel then, right, transform, translate, and reduce drastically the number of tables to a handful of tables that we like to call data products. So what are data products? Data products is data that has been transformed, standardized, made relevant, and ready to be consumed by non-technical users. So if we take one example that I'm showing you here, the campaign performance data product is a very simple table with a very simple structure with very meaningful column names, which means that a business user will be able to query this by using the tool of their choice, but of course, in our example, by using our Streamlit UI as well. Last but not least, I want to take a glimpse at one of our connectors just to emphasize the fact that they are independent native apps as well. So in this case, this is the Maxa connector for Salesforce Sales Cloud. Customers will be able to download this from the Snowflake marketplace in the coming months to be able to move that raw data onto Snowflake and then be able to create value with the rest of Maxa. So that's it for the demo. Raph, back to you.
Thanks, Fred. Let me share my screen again. There we go. Okay. So what you just saw, of course, is a glimpse of the Maxa Executive Hub powered by Streamlit technology. It allows to sort of consume and engage with those beautiful pre-computed data assets that come out as a product. Behind the scenes, there's Maxa Perform, our library of themed automated analytics. What's super interesting is as we're building out, so this themed library we update every quarter, what we're starting to see is some of our customers are actually innovating on top of it. So they're actually building their own themed analytics on top of the Maxa Universal Business Data Model inside Maxa Perform, and they're able to actually innovate and continue working on it and consume their data products with their own analytics. Maxa Translate uses dynamic tables to do the magic, and it's this beautiful orchestration of intelligence that lays it out for us. And if we sort of put ourselves in the future, so we are going to be releasing, hopefully by summer, the Maxa Self-Serve. Essentially, Maxa Self-Serve is going to be using Snowflake Container Services with hybrid tables, and it's going to allow business users to actually get all the data modeling they want or need and their analytics with a simple Streamlit application. And another thing that we find super exciting is Snowflake Cortex with Maxa. So one of the challenges with LLM technology is that they hallucinate. In the enterprise, hallucinations, it's really hard to be trustworthy of all the facts that are coming out. And if you think of the CFO office, 90% accuracy is dead on arrival. It has to be 100%. Because we pre-compute everything, we hold the full lineage of every calculation, therefore the full auditable trace. And then because we're shrinking thousands or hundreds of tables into pre-computed assets that are very simple, applying governance is really easy. Now, if you think of the LLM world, people are discovering LLM technology as a new way to engage with technology and knowledge. The key question now for the enterprise is who gets to access what? Who gets to access the knowledge? Governance becomes key. And that's usually something that is not thought of when deployed to the enterprise, which is why we think that Maxa on Snowflake is one of the most trusty source of LLM-powered insights for ERPs in the enterprise. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Presentation skills on fire, as always, to be expected at this point. So I've been hogging the questions, so I'm going to open it up to the floor. I do have one, try to fit it in. But anyone on the line, feel free to shoot.
Yeah, Ralph, nice to see you again, and awesome presentation. Super excited about what y'all are doing and the space that you're playing in. I guess from question really revolving around the translate and perform piece. You mentioned that customers were really starting to build on top of that and innovate on top of that. Is all of this treated as somewhat of an accumulation benefit over time, where whatever is innovated on within Maxa is available to others, whether that's again on the perform side with the library and the accumulation that happens over time? Can you kind of just speak to that of the iterations that are had by customers, and if it's broadly broadly available to every customer on the Maxa platform over time?
So it's super interesting question. Of course, everything I think of these as sort of Lego blocks. So as you think of data products, we're sort of gradually building more and more augmented data products as Lego blocks. So Maxa continues to add Lego blocks, which are available across the board to everybody. If you think of customers, they technically have the choice. There's two scenarios. They're in an industry that we've never even looked at, and they're starting to build out their things, and they would like to maybe share it. That's fine. We're also seeing some of them are, they're actually, instead of spending, if you think of their AI projects, instead of spending their entire money of making sense of data, bringing it together, then finally, if you're lucky, you spend your time on that AI thing, they're putting all their budget against it. So they're actually wrapping their proprietary intel in it, and they may not disclose it. So I'd say it falls on the two. What I find interesting is because we can simplify and sort of democratize ERP data, we're seeing people that would not naturally think of sort of scaling ERP data into insights, because now it's made simple and accessible. they're actually now can start doing it.
So one thing I've been fascinated about since I learned about Max is how the company persona you go after is different than Snowflake's typical company persona, I'd say. You talked about that 3x growth in customers you saw through the course of the year. Who are these customers? What do they look like?
So, I mean, we like to call them innovative CFOs. I mean, CFOs, they're literally, their job is to report on ERP data, so they're really aligned on our like core thesis. But the innovative CFOs, I mean, they've been underserved. They know all the answers to their questions in ERP data, and they're like, when we meet, it's almost like, where have you been all my life? So these folks get the problem intricately. They know there should be a solution. There should be a solution out there, but it does not exist. And they're the ones that, like, conversation after 15 minutes, you get pulled in right away. That's why we're zeroing on that. And what's interesting, if you think of just the change, the CFO moving from scorekeeper to goal scorer, if you look at now the mandates of the CFOs, you can almost call them digital CFOs. And digital CFOs are asked to, I don't want you just to report on the health of the business. I want you to go across all business functions from operations, supply chain, and I want you to help. Their mandate now is to help and give guidance so that operations align with margins, supply chain are reducing working capital, and sales are probably more efficiently pushing what's required to really improve those financial results. So I think it's also a question of timing. The CFOs right now are actually, they're looking for answers. They're looking for new ways to do things because they're giving new mandates. And if you zoom out even more, there's starting to be a trend also we're seeing where CIOs now are starting to report back into CFOs. So you can see that, like, data, financial accountability reporting tech is becoming super interesting and important for CFOs. So that's why we're focusing on them.
Max, team, thanks a ton for joining. Excited to see what 2024 looks like for you all, given what last year looked like. So thanks a ton.
Cheers. Thank you very much.
All right, excellent. We have our final demo of the day joining right now. David, welcome.
Hey.
I just want to say, if there's one thing I've learned at Snowflake, I've been at Snowflake for 9 years. It's if the sales engineers get excited about something, you should pay attention. And that's something that's certainly happening with Honeydew. So, David, I want to welcome you, and I'm going to hand it over to you to introduce us to Honeydew and show us the product.
All right. Thanks a lot, Ben, and thanks a lot, everybody, for your time. My name is David. I'm one of the co-founders of Honeydew, and we are a semantic layer native to Snowflake. Essentially, we enable all core business metrics like revenue, churn, active users to be consistent across the organization. So what will we do now? I'll just jump into a demo. And while we'll do that, we'll touch on how we got there, what do we do, why do we do that, or where we go from there. All right, so we start here with Snowflake, and with a lot of data on that Snowflake. My own background, so I've been in data space for a while. My second founder, my previous company was a data lake accelerator acquired by Starburst. My two co-founders are also from data. One built Einstein for Sales at Salesforce, and the other one, she built a marketing data company. So we came from that. And when we started this 2 years ago, the key insight that we had is something has been changing from the fact that you got all your data on your Snowflake. So for example, on our Snowflake here, we've got here call center data and customer data, demographic data, promotions, returns, web data, clickstream data, all of that seem in the same place. So you can have your analytics across a customer journey, across a life cycle. But then having all the data in one place is not enough. Because think about, for example, you have your customer data. There's a customer table. And that customer table has some connection to maybe to demographics. But how do you make sure everybody connect customer and demographics in the same way? Because if they don't, they're going to get different numbers. Different numbers mean awkward conversations, means things that don't add up, means in one case, bad decisions with data. Or another case, just not using data because it's not trusted. So how do you enable all the various cases? And there's so many people using Snowflake at the same time to agree. So let's see a few. One is data science. So for example, what you see here is a hex, a tool data scientists use a lot. And it looks at a couple of metrics here. Revenue, gross profit, month for a month, maybe for predictive analytics case. Now the same metrics, revenue, gross profit, might be also relevant for a marketing analyst using an entirely different tool. So we move from a hex tool to a BI tool to a Tableau. That might be interesting for a marketing analyst. Now, do notice that the same graph, same numbers, same metrics, same graph, that's really non-trivial, because usually already moving from data science to BI and getting the same numbers is a challenge. But it's not just having the same graph, having the same definitions. Because if you're a marketing analyst in a Tableau, maybe you look at revenue, but maybe you care about locations. So you want to look at that revenue everywhere in the US except Brooklyn. And maybe you're a supply chain analyst using a tool like Looker, entirely different tool, same metrics, but then you care about supply chain things. For example, how do we do on, let's pick one, how do we do in cheese? Let's see how do we do in cheese. Not very profitable in cheese, are we? So in all this, essentially, you want to have the ability to share that definition of revenue or profit within each context, within each tool. This is where we enter. So Honeydew here is a native application in Snowflake Marketplace. And we're semantic layer, meaning that we extend that notion so that you've got all your data in your Snowflake in the same place, with the fact that you also now got all your logic, all your business logic in that same place on what's revenue, on what's profit, on how you connect the different entities together. And then you can manage that from there across the different use cases. So the CS in action, so we asked you a question about cheese. Let's see how that got to us. So we go up from the stack, from all the different tools, into now to the one place that's shared across the organization. So this is our UI, and just I'll refresh it. And I'll do that to open up the last query. So that last query, that was a query from Looker that asked about revenue and profit of cheese. And it got to the same place, so that's some data. So what we've done with it, one is, in the very technical sense, we generated a SQL query. We generated a query that actually got the data. It knew how to connect those things, knew how to compute those things, applied aggregations, joins, caching, all the technical properties of getting that data to the customer. But from an organization perspective, it used a shared data model. It used a shared data model that has two things. One, what do you have in your data? What's your business entities, your customers, your locations, and how do they connect? How do they relate one to another? So customers' locations here are related via orders. This is our data model. By setting it up once, it means that every time someone asks about disparate data, it's going to be connected in the same way. It's going to go through the same path, and something will both validate data and keep a shared source of truth for that, which is really the core of how you use data. The next is that we asked for a term. So we asked about gross profit. This is a term that you want to have to be able to manage. So different users will be able to talk about it, but it will mean the same thing. So again, technical sense, gross profit is an expression. This is how we're going to compute that. From an organizational sense, it has an owner, it has a description, it has a list of changes, it has a life cycle around it to share it, to collaborate on it, to create deployment process on it, to agree. Now, when we talk to customers about it, and we have customers today in fintech, working customers in cyber, in retail, one of the things they ask, and they like to look at this thing, and they also ask, what's your vision? So where do you go from there? And because when you say, okay, I have this one place for the logic, on one hand, might enable my Looker and my data science to talk the same language. This already have a lot of value. But then it also opens up new use cases that were not even imaginable before. One of them is AI, because, and now I'll move more to the data and ask a question here, which is English question. Please show me the revenue in Brooklyn. But unlike traditional English to SQL, that thing is actually a semantic question, because what revenue is? It is a semantic layer. Revenue has a shared definition, controlled and centrally defined, of summing up prices on the order items table. So whatever AI asks about revenue, it gets translated to something that people can rely on. It asked about Brooklyn, that's going to be translated to locations and looking at a location name as a filter. So having this semantic layer, and data people intuitively understand that. If you have a semantic layer in between, you're going to be able to ask very complex question in a very simple interface, and then get some answer. Well, like our revenue in Brooklyn is $12 million. So that's like, in a sense, what we are, right? That shared source of truth. And before I finish the demo, I want to close with one thing. One thing that's been happening, it's really curious, over the last 6 months or so, I think, there's something like a change. More and more, so we talk with enterprise customers. This is a problem for large companies, obviously, because then you need to agree. And more and more customers talking about with us about the fact they're going to do a semantic layer project in 2024. They're going to do a semantic layer project in 2025. Because, and I think it's maturity of the market or about the adoption of Snowflake, but something that flipped. Because people start to look at their data stack from a perception of, I'm going to have all my data in one place, I'm going to have my logic in one place, and I'm going to build a lot of consumption tools without lock in to any of them. I'm going to adopt them to different users in my organization. And this is like a block that people start to draw within their stack, which is something that we kind of started to experience over the last, I think, 6 months or so. And that essentially sets our vision and our roadmap to just keep exploring that trend. Thank you so much. Well, happy to answer questions.
David, thanks a ton. I wanted to start out with a question. So I think even since we last spoke, this AI use case was maybe not on the roadmap. Like, when did you realize that was a valid play for you all?
So customers kept asking us about it. Like, people talk about Gen AI and data, but again, I said data people, they know that just jumping from Gen AI to an answer is something that has a lot of risk involved. And like semantic is something people understand, but just people were asking it to us. So it's figured out, why not try Connect GPT-4 and build something and see what it does. And it seemed really amazing.
Hey, David, thanks so much. Super interesting. I'm curious on the data modeling side, does it depend how the actual warehouse is modeled? I know a lot of warehouses are modeled with dimensional modeling these days, but there are other model formats like semi-nested data, wide fact tables. I'm just curious if you're able to pick up on those different formats and you're able to at least support these other modeling formats.
Essentially, we've seen all of those. And when we build a product, we think about that agnostically and try to adopt different models. We start with relational packing dimensions and then wide facts. Semi-structured data, so we added a feature around that. When you map, say, a customer entity from a field in my semi-structured JSON, but I want to have that as a customer entity to BI, and something you can do with us. So I think as a semantic layer, we don't care, but we do support, like we do actual dev work to support different structures to work well and easy for a customer.
Got it. Thank you.
Sweet. David, thanks a ton. It was great seeing you live. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, everybody.
And with that wraps it up. Thanks all from the VC team with you all participating today. I want to thank everybody that joined us through the webinar. Snowflake's data ecosystem really depends on smart startups like this, bringing new products to market, doing well, getting them in the hands of enterprise customers. And it's great to check out a few that are doing that today. So hope you all had fun. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you next time.
Thanks, Ben.
Thank you.